Yeah. So before we start, we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna say that queuing. There's no right or wrong. There is no you're right, you're wrong. There's always cues that are gonna work for some people and cues that don't work for others. Okay. So um, for baseball specifically, whether it's trainers or just hitting coaches, pitching coaches, whatever it is, college coaches. There's usually three types of coaches you're going to get. It's going to be the experienced guy who knows his stuff because he's played somewhere. It's the guru who's just like, all over Twitter, just loves tweeting about stuff, just like constantly trying to get back at the experienced guy because he didn't make it to the spot that he's at. And then you have the third guy who I think, is more like us, who just sits back quietly and just, watches people fight each other and just laughs at them and then, makes them look like idiots. So really, let's get into each step first and let's
There's
talk
a
about.
fourth. There's a fourth coach
Oh,
of
go
it.
ahead, go ahead, Robbie. Go ahead. Give
There's
us
a
the
fourth
fourth.
coach. It's the if I didn't blow my knee out, I'd still be playing coach.
that was more the guru type. I put him
Okay.
in the guru type.
Okay.
So yes, that's right in there with guru. So um, really with the guru type, I personally I think that they're the worst. They're the worst of all time because no matter what anyone says on Twitter, no matter what anyone says on Instagram, whatever it is, they're arguing no matter what they do. So the gurus will go ahead and they'll just argue about cues. They'll argue back and forth with the experienced guys about what kind of cues they use and all that stuff. Now the experienced guys will argue back with the guru and say you're wrong. But the irony behind all of that is that they're just arguing cues back and forth. No one's right or wrong. They're just arguing back and forth for cues. So, for example, there was on Twitter the other day there was a guy. I'm sure all of you guys know him. I won't say his name, but he was arguing with another guy had a ton of experience at MLB, and they were just going back and forth with each other. My biggest problem with these guys is that they're not so focused on what's right or wrong. Well, they're just more focused on their ego and them trying to make sure that they're right rather than trying to help out an athlete or trying to help out the baseball community, whatever they're trying to do. So for example, he says something like, Bo Bichette, he watch him here. He's getting really around the baseball. He's really that barrel's working around that ball, and then he'll show a video of someone else's lesson, and he'll say, "See, he's whipping it." So my big problem here is that what if Bo Bichette in his video was saying, "I'm trying to whip it," and then the other video, the guy was like, "I'm trying to come around it." They're just contradicting each other because no one has any idea what anyone's thinking at any time. So they just argue cues constantly. They're saying things like, stay on top of the baseball, or like don't, you're flying open, anything like that. How do we know that those cues don't help those guys? How do we know that things like A Rod, for example, I posted on Instagram before, how he thinks about literally chopping at a baseball. We're never gonna go up to A Rod and say, "Hey, man, don't think like that. You're an idiot." Like, you know what I mean? Like that's that we're never gonna do that. A Rod thinks the way he thinks, and that's fine.
What was
Sure,
his cue for injecting himself?
what's that, Robbie?
What was his cue for injecting himself?
Insert.
Okay.
I don't think he injected himself. I think that's probably
Yeah,
why he didn't need a cue for
he
that.
didn't need a cue for that. He was getting help for that. So another one I posted on Instagram today was a Pedro. I thought it was a great lesson for a lot of pitchers out there. I think we get a lot of kids in the facility who look for answers and look for that magic pill. And you could tell that even Pedro doesn't even know how his body works, which is fine. That's completely fine. Like there's no right or wrong answer for that. If he says that he's going to try to fit a baseball through a tube in front of his face, we all know that his release point probably doesn't happen way out in front of his face. It happens off to the side of him, which is fine. But if he's thinking that the tube is going to be out in front of his face and he's going to try to pinpoint that baseball in front of him, no one's going to go up to him and be like, "Hey, Pedro Martinez, you're probably wrong for thinking that." That's fine. He can think that way. Um, so I think one of the biggest problems we have with a lot of these coaches is that, like I said before, the experienced guys will go after these gurus and say, stop talking about, your cue that you're talking about, and then the guru will go back at him and say that your cue is wrong, and it's just back and forth arguments
Well,
about these people who are just arguing cues.
yeah. I mean, what's funny about that is you can't possibly be right. So
No,
if I'm working, it's literally impossible. If I am hitting, right, and I'm thinking something, someone that is not me or in the same room as me talking about it with me can't possibly tell me, what cue is right, wrong, what I'm working on, what I'm thinking, what I'm doing. So I think a lot of this back and forth on Twitter and Instagram has to do with business and clout.
Mhm.
So to your original foursome or threesome, but then Robbie added
Rob has foursome.
The guru needs to make up for the fact that he didn't play, right? So he needs to never be wrong. Like he can't be wrong because he can't fall back on the, well, it worked for me. I put up 320 in the MLB. So that's why generally I think the gurus are very outspoken, and I hate the word guru as it is, but the teacher king or whatever that I always label them at. I think they're very outspoken because it helps their business. But now I think there's a pushback with the people who played before because a lot of people are putting their trust into the hitting or pitching gurus, right? So now all of a sudden it's like, well, why are you trusting that guy? Oh, well, that guy obviously knows something. And unfortunately, what I think is getting lost here is the kids. Because no one is actually given a shit about the kids. If you really think about it, like if you go on Twitter and go on someone else's page and rip another hitting coach and what he's doing with the kid, you don't care about the kid.
Dude, do you remember? It was like last year, 2 of them were arguing back and forth, and they were posting videos of the kids that each other was working with, and they were like,
the kids were like 10 years old.
The one kid was like 14. I was like, oh my god, poor kid. He didn't ask. All that kid did. He was like, bye, Dad. I'm going to go hit and, live my life as a 14-year-old. And then I'll, try to, DM a girl and say something awkward. He was just, going through his daily life. And then he just got blown up on Twitter for, that poor kid.
Right. And so, I mean, in the public eye, I think we all try to post videos based on kids that we work with. You know what I mean? We post, so I'll post a video of a kid that I know and I work with and something that interests me. It may not even be bad swing, good swing, whatever. It'll just be something that I think is interesting, and maybe other people will think it's interesting as well. But it's never like oh, look at me, our kids are or I should say, I'm the best hitting coach or best pitching coach in the world on the planet.
My kids.
Right. And again, I think we've been very good at that, not accepting any credit whatsoever for the success or failure of any of our kids, because as we've been talking last week, it's all their process and whatnot. And that's the problem. And Howie, that's my biggest problem with the online culture right now is all these dudes are taking credit. Okay, so a first rounder comes into our facility, right? And he makes it to the bigs. And all of a sudden, I'm talking about how I helped him get to the big. And you're like, dude, that was a first-round draft pick. That dude was one of the best top 0.01% in the world. Did I help him? I hope so. That's my job. That's my goal. But is it because of me? No. And again, I think it's turning me off on the social media, but I think it's turning a lot of people off, this constant fight between the guru that knows all the cues and everything, or I should say the right cues, and then the experienced guy who knows the right cues because it worked for him, which also may not work for other people. You can't possibly know that.
The part that drives me nuts is, to me, it's like it proves to me that you actually don't care about that individual.
Absolutely.
Because, number one, you're not fostering their want for knowledge, right? So instead of just teaching them and I think a lot of these guys do it that way because they don't know any better, because they don't want to say, I don't know the answer, right? Because then their business is screwed. If you're giving lessons and you start telling kids you don't know the answer, you're fucked. It's over.
Which is the most ironic thing, that the only time I've ever did a public speech was, I can't teach you shit. And I think everyone in the room was like, what? Because it's so different. It's just a different mindset,
That's the whole thing. Dude, I don't know. If you need someone to give you a motivational speech to get you to do something, then you're not gonna do it.
But I think the real big problem here, Howie, and you mentioned it, is what it is creating is a culture where all our baseball kids think there's a singular answer.
Absolutely, yeah.
You know what I mean? Like they think, oh well, if I just do this, if I do A, then B.
Yes.
If I do C, then D, and we get this linear level thinking.
Yep.
And it's like, damn, that is crushing kids. And again, since we've been talking about it for last week, not just on the baseball field, but it's crushing them off the field too. Yeah, yeah. Because then they're tied. They're tied to someone else's opinion. Like someone else always has the answer. Yep. So as long as I find that someone and I give them money, I'm going to get that answer.